Grawl read the file 3 times because he was sure he had misread it. He had not misread it. Human female. 19 years old. From Drakmore Station, a frozen rock of a mining colony at the edge of the outer belt. No athletic sponsors. No formal training record. No competition history at all. She had been added to the program as a last-minute replacement after the original human candidate broke 2 ribs in a transport accident. Grawl set the file down on his desk and stared at the ceiling of his office for a long moment. Then he picked it up again and looked at the photograph. She was small. Even by human standards, she looked small. Dark eyes, short hair, a face that had clearly spent a lot of time in cold wind. That he had trained 41 alien recruits over his career at the Crucible. 41. He had broken every single one of them at some point. Some had quit in the first week. Some had lasted longer and then collapsed under the pressure of real competition. A few had gone on to become solid mid-tier athletes who quietly thanked him from a safe distance. None of them had ever come from a mining colony. He closed the file and walked down to the arrival dock. The transport from Gate 7 was already unloading when he got there. He stood at the edge of the platform with his arms behind his back and watched the new batch come through the door. There were 6 of them. A Valorian male, wide-shouldered and already looking around the facility with the careful eyes of someone who had done his research. 2 Philosians traveling together, which was typical. A large Branathi who moved like a slow, confident wall. An older Crethean with a bad leg who had no business being here, but whose family had apparently paid enough to buy him a spot. And then the human girl. She came through the door last. She had a single bag over one shoulder, and she was looking up at the ceiling of the docking bay, which was tall enough to fit a mid-range freight carrier. Her expression was not amazement. It was more like she was checking the structural supports out of habit. The atmosphere hit all newcomers differently. The Crucible ran at 1.3 standard gravity with slightly elevated oxygen pressure, calibrated for optimal Valorian performance. Most human-equivalent species needed at least 3 days to stop feeling it. Rindara took 2 steps onto the platform, adjusted her bag strap, and kept walking. Grawl watched her cross the bay toward the check-in station. Her stride was not graceful. It was efficient. The walk of someone who was used to moving across uneven ground while carrying weight. He met her at the station. She looked up at him. He was over 7 feet tall, scaled, and had been described by one journalist as looking like what happened when a reptile decided to take physical fitness personally. Most new recruits either tried too hard to look calm or failed entirely. Rindara looked at him the way she had looked at the ceiling, like she was taking inventory. "Rindara," he said. "Not a question." "Yes," she said. "You have no formal athletic training record." "No." "You have no sponsorship." "No." "You have never competed in any registered event at any level." "Not any registered one," she said. He studied her for a moment. "You will quit by morning," he said. "Most do not even make it that far, but I suspect you are stubborn enough to last until exhaustion makes the decision for you." She looked at him without blinking. "What time does morning training start?" He told her. She nodded once, picked up her bag, and walked toward the residential block. Grawl stood there for a moment longer than he intended. The entry screening happened 3 hours later. It was not designed to test skill. It was designed to measure baseline endurance and give Grawl a picture of what he was working with. The course ran for 40 minutes at increasing resistance, ending with a full gravity sprint segment that most new recruits failed to complete. Rin finished last. It was not even close. The Valorian male, whose name was Dross, finished more than 11 minutes ahead of her. Lyra, the senior Philosian who had been at the Crucible for 2 full cycles and was currently ranked 3rd overall, watched from the observation rail with the kind of expression that was too polite to be called contempt, but Rin finished. Every other human equivalent candidate who had ever attempted the entry screening had stopped somewhere in the last segment. Grawl had the records going back 9 years. Not one had completed it on the first attempt. Rin crossed the finish line, put her hands on her knees for exactly 4 seconds, then stood up straight. Grawl walked over to her. The rest of the recruits were watching. "You are inefficient," he said. "Your stride pattern wastes energy on every step. Your breathing is wrong for this atmosphere. Your recovery response is slow. You are built wrong for this program." She wiped her face with the back of her hand. Okay, she said. What do I fix first? The observation rail was quiet. Grawl looked at her for a long moment. Then he turned and walked back toward the training hall. Be at the floor at 0500, he said without looking back. We will find out. The second day started before the sun came up over Orith 4. The gas giant filled one full wall of the training floor through the observation glass, all orange and brown and slow-moving clouds. Most new recruits stopped to look at it on their first morning. It was hard not to. It was enormous and strange and beautiful in a way that made people feel very small. Rin was already stretching when Grawl arrived. She had her back to the window that he had designed that morning's training block the night before with one purpose in mind. Not injury, not cruelty, just exposure. He wanted to put her in front of every physical demand she could not meet and let the weight of it do its work. Recruits who saw themselves clearly, who truly understood the gap between where they were and where the program required them to be, usually made the right decision on their own. They did not need to be pushed out. They simply left. The block was built around Valorian physiological strengths. Explosive burst movement, precise four-limb coordination drills, heat endurance chambers, everything that Rin, as a human from a cold climate colony, would perform worst at. He called the group to the floor and began. 2 hours later, he had his results. Dross moved through the burst drills like he had been born for them, which he more or less had. Lyra executed the coordination sequences with the automatic grace of long practice. Even the Branathi, slow as a moving wall, had enough raw force output to score within acceptable range on the heat chamber segment. Rin was last in every single category. Not close to last. Last by a visible distance. The other veterans watched from the secondary floor. Some of them had stopped pretending not to watch. There was nothing mean in most of their faces. It was closer to the expression people wore when they saw something they expected to end badly and were not sure whether to look away. Sova, the only other human in the program, stood near the water station with his arms crossed. He was 22, had been at the Crucible for half a cycle, and had survived longer than most humans did. He was not talented. He was careful. She needs to stop, he said quietly to no one. He said it again after the coordination drills, when Rin's timing was so far off the sequence markers that the training system flagged her 3 times in a row. She is making it worse by trying. Rin did not stop. After the 4th flagged attempt, she stepped back off the drill plate, looked at the sequence display for a long moment, and then asked Grawl a question that was not on the standard list of things recruits asked. Is the sequence timed for Valorian reflex speed or average galactic? Grawl looked at her. Valorian. So the gap between the 2nd and 3rd marker. That is about 40 milliseconds shorter than my natural response window. Yes. What if I start the 3rd movement before the 2nd marker completes instead of after? He did not answer immediately. He did not answer for 3 full seconds, which was unusual for him. Try it, he said. She stepped back onto the plate. She was still last. She was still flagged. But the timing error on the 3rd marker dropped by more than half. Grawl made no comment. He moved the group to the partner drills .by design. He paired Rin with Lyra. Lyra accepted the assignment the way she accepted most things, with visible professionalism and invisible impatience. They were supposed to run a resistance and grip exchange, a drill that required one partner to maintain a hold against the other's attempt to break free. Lyra broke every hold Rin attempted in under 4 seconds. Then it was Rin's turn to hold. Lyra pulled back with the full force of a trained Philosian athlete, and Rin's grip held for 11 seconds. Not because Rin was strong enough to match her. She was not even close. But she was not holding the way the drill diagram showed. She had shifted her angle and was using leverage the way someone used it when operating heavy equipment in low-grip conditions. Her whole body was acting as a brace, not just her arms. That IT was completely wrong by technique standards. That IT worked anyway. Lyra stopped pulling and looked at her. Where did you learn that? Lyra asked. Mining equipment, Rin said. Orelodis. You brace against the machine's own pull point or it takes your shoulder with it. Lyra said nothing. She stared at Rin for another moment. Then she set her stance and started the exchange again. That night, Grawl sat in his office and played back the session footage. Not all of it, just the grip exchange. He watched it 4 times. The girl had no training. Her form was wrong in almost every technical way that mattered. She was operating at a significant physiological disadvantage against every other recruit on the floor, and she was looking for solutions in real time. Every time she failed, the next attempt was different. Not randomly different, specifically different. He opened the next day's training block on his screen that he told himself he was not adjusting it to suit her. He was testing a theory. There was a difference that he began to redesign it anyway. Nobody told Rin that the training had changed. She just noticed the burst drills disappeared from the morning block. In their place were endurance sequences, long and repetitive, the kind that rewarded consistent output over explosive speed. The coordination work was still there, but the timing markers had shifted by a small margin that only mattered if you knew what to look for. Rin looked for it. She did not thank Grawl. She did not mention it all. She just worked harder. The new block was still difficult. It was difficult in a specific way now, the way a door was difficult when someone had finally put the handle at the right height. The challenge did not disappear. It sharpened. She was being pushed to the edge of what she could do, not thrown past it. Sova noticed the change on the 3rd day. He pulled Rin aside after the morning session while the others were at the water stations. He adjusted the program for you, Sova said. He kept his voice low. I know, Rin said. That is not normal. He does not do that. Then maybe he is testing something, she said. Sova looked at her for a moment. You are not worried about why. I am more worried about whether I can keep up with what he sets, she said. She picked up her bag and walked toward the recovery room. Sova watched her go with the expression of a man who was not sure whether to be impressed or concerned that on the 8th day, Director Caven arrived. Caven ran the Galactic Athletic Commission's Training Oversight Division, which meant he had authority over program funding, trainee rankings, and the public image of everything that happened inside the Crucible. He was a thin, pale Valorian with neat clothes and the careful eyes of someone who thought in quarterly reports that he came to Grawl's office first. Grawl did not offer him a seat. The rankings update is in 4 days, Caven said. He had a data tablet in one hand and was scrolling through it without quite looking at Grawl. I noticed the human girl is still in the program. She, as Grawl said, her performance metrics are in the lower tier across every category. She's in her 2nd week with no prior formal training, Grawl said. Her metrics are where I expect them to be. Caven set the tablet down on the edge of the desk. The commission has sponsors reviewing trainee rosters this cycle. A human recruit with no competitive background, no sponsorship, performing at the bottom of the rankings. It is not a good look. It suggests the program accepted a placeholder. My floor is not a sponsor preview. Grawl said that Caven's expression did not change, but something behind it did. I am not asking you to remove her formally. I am simply suggesting that if she finds the program too demanding and chooses to withdraw, then she will withdraw, Grawl said. She has not. The two of them looked at each other across the desk for a moment. She will, Caven said, and picked up his tablet and left. Grawl stood in his office for a long time after the door closed. He was not thinking about Caven. He was thinking about the grip exchange footage he had watched 5 times now. He was thinking about the timing marker adjustment Rin had identified on her own without being told what to look for. He went back to the training floor. The afternoon session was grip and contact work, 2 recruits moving against each other in real time, no set sequence. It was the kind of drill that showed instinct more than technique. Grawl paired recruits deliberately, matching strengths against weaknesses to push both. He put Rin against a mid-rank Philosian named Daratel, who was twice her size. That IT went badly for about 40 seconds. Then it got interesting. Rin was not trying to match force. She was watching. Every time Daratel committed to a direction, Rin redirected instead of resisting, using the other athlete's movement to change her own position. She was losing every exchange, but each loss was shorter than the last. Lyra sat on the bench along the wall and watched. She had her arms folded and her tail moving slowly the way it did when she was thinking. After the session, Rin came and sat down at the far end of the bench without asking. She did not try to start a conversation. She started unlacing her training shoes. Lyra looked sideways at her. You were trying to learn his patterns mid-session, Lyra said. Yes, Rin said. You will not get enough repetitions in one session to use it effectively. Not yet, Rin said. Lyra was quiet for a moment. I train on the secondary floor at 1900. The space is empty. I do not need a partner, but I do not object to one if they stay out of my way. Rin looked at her. Okay, she said. She was there at 1900. Lyra was not kind about it. She corrected Rin's form with the same directness she used for everything, flat and precise, no softening. But she was accurate. Every correction was the right one. By the end of the week, Rin's ranking had moved from 15th to 13th. Grawl reviewed the updated rankings in his office that night. He did not allow himself to feel anything about it. He simply noted it, the way he noted data, and then opened the next week's training schedule and began to plan. The theory was holding. The ranking board updated every 3 days. Rin had started looking at it the same way she had once looked at the output screens back on Drakmore Station. Not with hope. With information, she was ranked 9th. The top 8 advanced to the GAC championship bracket. She needed to move 1 spot. She had 2 weeks. In those 2 weeks, she lost 7 ranking matches and won 4. The losses were not random. She went back and reviewed every single one the same night it happened, sitting on the floor of the empty secondary training room with her datapad in her lap and the footage playing at half speed. She was not looking for what had gone wrong in a general way. She was looking for the exact moment, the specific decision, the small mistake that had opened the door for the other athlete. It was not always obvious. Sometimes she watched the same 30 seconds 6 or 7 times before she found it. But she always found something. Grawl did not ask her to do this. He did not even know she was doing it until Lyra mentioned it offhand during a morning drill transition. He said nothing. He added a tactical review session to her afternoon block the following day. The 2 weeks were hard in a way that Rin did not talk about. The gravity was something she had adjusted to in the first week, mostly. The oxygen pressure had stopped giving her headaches. But the training volume was heavier than anything she had done before, and her body was running recovery calculations that had not been built to run on the GAC standard schedule done on the 9th day. She figured out why. The standard recovery cycle at the Crucible was designed around Valorian biology, same as everything else. Valorians needed longer deep sleep windows, but fewer of them. Humans needed the opposite. She had been sleeping on the wrong schedule for 2 weeks and losing roughly 30% of her recovery efficiency every night. She changed her schedule without asking anyone. She slept in shorter cycles, more often working around the facility's quiet hours. She set alerts on her pad. She stopped trying to follow the standard timetable entirely. Within 4 days, she felt the difference. Sova noticed first. He found her in the corridor at 0430, heading to the secondary floor for an extra session. You look less dead, he said. I fixed my sleep, she said. He stared at her. You just changed it yourself. The standard cycle is for Valorians. We are not Valorians. Sova was quiet for a moment. He looked like he was trying to remember if he had ever thought about this before. I have been on the standard cycle since I arrived, he said. I know, she said, and went to train. The hit happened on the 11th day. IT was a live contact drill, full resistance, and her partner was a senior Bernathi named Goss who had more mass than she had body weight. He moved slower than almost anyone on the floor, but when he caught you completely. He caught her mid-sequence with a full arm sweep that sent her into the floor mat hard enough to knock her breath out. The sound was loud enough that the secondary floor went quiet. Sova half stood up from the bench. Rin lay flat for exactly 2 seconds. Then she rolled to her knees, put one hand on the mat, and stood up. She tightened her grip wrap on her left wrist, reset her stance, and looked at Goss. Again, she said. Goss looked at her with the slow, careful expression of a Bernathi working through something unexpected. The drill continued. Nobody on the floor made a sound for the rest of that session. After the session, Lyra walked past Rin without stopping and said quietly, Your left side guard is still open when you rotate. I know, Rin said. I am working on it. Work faster, Lyra said, and kept walking. 3 days before the ranking cutoff, Rin sat at 10th. She needed to move 2 spots in 72 hours. She won a ranking match against a mid-tier Creathian the following morning by staying out of his reach for the first 4 minutes and then pushing hard in the final two when his pace had dropped. She moved a 9.1 spot. One day, the last available ranking match was against a Valorian named Toll who had been sitting comfortably at 8th for most of the cycle and had no reason to push hard. Rin had reviewed his footage for 3 nights running. She knew his patterns. The match ran for 7 minutes. Toll was faster and stronger and more technically correct at every stage. But Rin did not fight him. She redirected. She made each exchange cost him more than he expected it to. She made him work for ground he thought he had already taken. Toll won. Rin moved to 9th. She did not advance. She sat on the bench afterward with her hands on her knees and stared at the floor. Sova sat down next to her and did not say anything, which was the right call. After a few minutes, she looked up at the ranking board. She was 1 spot short. Grawl walked past without stopping. "Be at the floor at 0500, he said. Same as always. She was there. The disqualification notice came through on a Tuesday. Dross, the Valorian who had been sitting at 5th in the rankings, had tested positive for a restricted performance compound during the cycle end screening. His results were nullified. His ranking was removed. Every trainee below him moved up 1 spot. Rin moved to 8th. She found out from Sova, who had seen the notice on the communal board before she woke up. He knocked on her door at 0610, and when she opened it, he simply said, "You are in." She stood in the doorway for a moment and looked at him. "Dross?" she said. "Yes." She did not cheer. She did not smile in the wide, relieved way Sova had half expected. She just nodded slowly and said, "What time is the bracket announcement?" It went out galaxy-wide within the hour that a human from Drakmore Station, no sponsors, no formal training record, had qualified for the GAC championship bracket in her first cycle at the Crucible. The GAC media office sent 3 different messages to Director Caven's desk before lunch. 2 of them were from major sponsors asking how they could attach their names to her story. Caven reversed his position completely and with no visible embarrassment. He sent Grawl a message suggesting they prepare Rin for media availability. Grawl did not reply. Rin spent the morning in the training hall. The bracket was 8 athletes competing over 2 rounds. Her first round match was announced that afternoon. Her opponent was Lyra. Sova found out and went quiet in the way people went quiet before bad news landed. Rin read the bracket, sat with it for about 10 seconds, and then picked up her training bag. "How many sessions do I have before the match?" she asked Grawl. 4, he said. "Then I need the footage from all of Lyra's ranked matches this cycle," she said. He had the files sent to her pad within the hour. The match was held on the main floor with the observation gallery above it open. It was not a championship match, only the first bracket round, but the gallery was full. Rin had not seen the gallery full before. She did not look up at it. She looked at Lyra. Lyra stood across the floor looking back at her with the calm, focused expression she wore in every match, the face of someone who had done this many times and knew how it would go. She was not wrong to be confident. On paper, the match was not close. Lyra was faster, better trained, and had more real competition experience than Rin had hours on the floor. She had been ranked 3rd this entire cycle. Rin had qualified as a statistical accident. The match started. Lyra came in fast and direct, which was her pattern. Rin went sideways and let her pass, which was not what Lyra expected. She had clearly prepared for a defensive hold style based on Rin's drill footage. The redirection threw her rhythm off by a fraction. The IT was a small thing. But Rin had been watching for it. The first 6 minutes were exactly what the gallery expected. Lyra controlled the space. She dictated the pace. Rin absorbed, redirected, and gave up ground steadily. From above, it looked like a slow, patient loss being managed with some skill. What the gallery could not see clearly was that Rin was counting. Every exchange cost Lyra something. Not much, but something. And Lyra was used to opponents who broke down or changed strategy under pressure, not opponents who stayed exactly the same and kept making each engagement slightly more expensive than the last. At the 8-minute mark, Lyra's pace dropped by a fraction. Rin pushed. She did not suddenly become a different athlete. She did not have a burst of speed she had been hiding. She simply increased her output at the exact moment Lyra's dropped. And for the next 90 seconds, she was harder to read, harder to hold, and harder to put down than she had been for the whole match. Lyra won. She won clearly and correctly. But it took her 11 minutes and 40 seconds, and her personal best time for a ranked match was 6 minutes flat. The gallery was not quiet when it ended. Grawl stood at the edge of the floor and watched Rin walk to the center to accept the result. She was breathing hard. Her left shoulder had taken a hit in the final exchange that she was going to feel for 3 days. He walked to the display board at the side of the floor and brought up the session record. In front of every trainee still in the building, he walked through Rin's match point by point. He showed the redirection in the opening sequence. He showed the exchange cost pattern in the middle phase. He showed the push at the 8-minute mark that he did not say she had won. She had not won. He said what she had done right. In plain terms, the way he would review the match of any athlete who had performed correctly, that it was the first time he had done this for a losing trainee. Nobody in the room said anything. Afterward, Lyra found Rin at the water station and stood next to her for a moment before speaking. "You fought like you had nothing to lose," Lyra said. Rin drank her water and looked at her. "I didn't," she said. Lyra looked at her for a long moment. Then she nodded once and walked away. 3 days after the bracket match, Director Caven arrived at the Crucible with a media team that he had not informed Grawl in advance, which told Grawl exactly how confident Caven felt about his own authority in that moment. He came through the main entrance with 2 camera operators and a GAC communications officer and walked toward the training floor like someone who expected doors to open ahead of him. Grawl met him in the corridor. "We would like footage of the human trainee in a session," Caven said, in a short recorded interview. "The sponsor interest has been significant. There are 4 separate broadcast arrangements being discussed as of this morning." "She is mid-session," Grawl said. "We can wait until there is a natural break." "There is no natural break until 1200. Caven looked at his communications officer and then back at Grawl. "She is a story," he said. "A human girl from a mining colony who qualified for the bracket with no background and no sponsor. That story has reach. That story brings investment into this program. Into your program." "My program does not need investment," Grawl said. "It needs to be left alone." "Grawl, she trains at 1200. If she chooses to speak to your camera after that, it is her decision. You will not interrupt the floor." Caven stood in the corridor for a moment with the expression of a man recalculating. Then he nodded. "Fine," he said. 1200. He and his team waited in the observation area at T1200. Grawl walked to the center of the floor where Rin was wrapping her wrist for the next drill block and said, simply, "There are people from the commission who want to talk to you. You do not have to." Rin looked toward the observation glass. She could see Caven and the camera operators. "What do they want?" she asked. "They want to make you into a story," Grawl said. She looked at the cameras for another moment. "Will it interfere with training?" "If you let it," he said. She nodded. "Tell them after 1400, she said, and picked up her grip wraps. Grawl walked back toward the observation area and told Caven the time. Caven, to his credit, accepted T1400. Rin sat in a chair on the secondary floor and answered questions from the communications officer for about 20 minutes. She did not perform for the camera. She did not smile at the right moments or deliver the kind of lines that edit well into promotional footage. She answered every question directly and without decoration. When the officer asked what had kept her going through a program clearly not built for her, she said, "I kept finding things to fix." When the officer asked what her goal was for the next cycle, she said, "To be harder to beat than I am now." When the officer asked whether she thought humans belonged in a program like this, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I think that question answers itself." The footage was broadcast across 14 GAC member systems within 48 hours. Caven sent Grawl a message that said simply, "She is extraordinary. You should let us build her profile." Grawl did not reply. He was sitting in his office that evening reviewing the training block for the following month. The championship preparation cycle was 12 weeks. The other advancing trainees had years of competition experience. Rin had one bracket match that she had lost. He built the block anyway. IT was the hardest thing he had designed in 9 years. Every session had 2 recovery checkpoints, calibrated for human biology, not the GAC standard. The technique work was built on leverage and redirection mechanics rather than burst performance. The endurance sequences ran longer than anything in the standard program, because endurance was where she had an edge, and he intended to sharpen it until it became the kind of edge that made faster athletes nervous. He finished at 2,300 and sat back in his chair. He had said to her, the night after the bracket results came through, that she would probably not win the championship. He had meant it as honesty, the same way he told every athlete the truth about where they stood. She was too new. The gap was too wide. She had one cycle of real training behind her against athletes with 10. She had nodded and said she knew. Then she had asked him why he was telling her. He had not had an answer for that. He still did not. He closed the training file and walked down to the main floor to check the equipment setup for morning. The floor was not empty. Rin was there at the far end, running movement patterns in the low light. Not drill sequences. Her own work, informal, repetitive, the kind of thing a person did when they were learning something deeply enough to stop thinking about it. She had not heard him come in. He watched for a moment. Her form was not perfect. It was never perfect, but it was better than it had been yesterday, in the specific, small, measurable ways that mattered over time. He turned to leave. At the corridor door, he stopped. He could hear footsteps on the stairs behind him. He turned back. Lyra walked onto the floor in her training gear. She looked at Rin. She looked at Grawl. She did not say anything to either of them. She went to the equipment rack, pulled out her grip bands, and walked to the opposite end of the floor and began her own work. Grawl stood in the doorway for one more moment. Then he went back to his office and opened the training block again. There was more work to do.